Welcome back to the No Nonsense Sustainability Podcast. I'm Ildiko Simsic, and today we're covering the circular economy. My guest is Dariusz Prasek, who was director at EBRD for a long time. Welcome to the show, Dariusz.
I'm very happy to be here.
If there was one thing you want to be remembered for all these decades of working in sustainability, what would you say was your proudest moment or biggest achievement?
I think, you cannot probably have just one, but I was proud to be a solution finder. So if there was a problem, I didn't try to find the problem, I was trying to solve the problem. And I guess that this is what I tried to do over the years that I was at EBRD.
I think that will come handy when we're unpacking the circular economy. I think this is a topic very close to your heart.
It is.
In a way, you've come full circle, having studied it and ended up drafting a strategy for like a country. So let me start by reading a report that is trying to talk about the company's circular economy initiative. And then we can try and define it without using any of these words, basically.
Okay.
Our company is committed to circularity by enabling value retention loops, leveraging design for reuse principles, and embedding cradle-to-cradle thinking into our supply chain architecture.
Sounds very complicated.
So, 60 seconds, no buzzwords. What is the circular economy?
Circular economy is a way of thinking, which allows us to keep resources as long as we can, to design products that we can use them as long as possible. That means we can repair them, regenerate. It is about using less resources manufacturing products. It is about using renewable energy while manufacturing products. So it is a way of thinking. It is a way of thinking which allows us to keep resources as long as we can, save the resources. And why we need to do this? Because we are using too much. We are using definitely too much. We are using 70% more than our planet can actually regenerate. So if we continue doing this, we will use all the resources, and with all the consequences, having high prices for resources and everything else, up to the moment that we will not have resources to manufacture things. So this is what circular economy is about.
Okay. Now, let me try and explain my understanding. On top of what you said, it's also about coming up with innovative ways to use byproduct, like manufacturing byproducts, in ways that make sense, or substituting other materials. So it's not just keeping things as durable as possible, but it's also about thinking what's the next life cycle for a product if it's no longer fit for purpose for what it was originally designed for. Could it be repurposed for something else? And also, what do we do with the byproducts of manufacturing?
I'm glad you asked this question. Yes, that's absolutely true. In true circular economy, there are no wastes. Waste is always a resource for something else. So first of all, the driver for circularity is the design. That when you design something, you think about the life cycle of a product. You think about various stages. Everything at some stage sort of finishes, but there are components which you can use. But in the production processes, as you rightly mentioned, there are these byproducts. And in ideal production cycle, we use these products for other things. So we don't produce waste. nothing is a waste, everything is a resource. So this is a true way of thinking how we use things and resources. But circular economy is not only this. Circular economy is also about different business models. Different business models, different thinking. So it is another driver.
Yeah, because then does it make sense to produce something that people will use forever and then they don't buy another thing? Does it make business sense to design with the type of technology and innovation that will allow this product to live on and have a second or a third life? How does that, when you mention business models, like how does this circular thinking factor into that?
I'll give you a very simple example. If I ask you, do you want to have your clothes clean or do you want to be an owner of a washing machine?
Well, it's obvious. I just want them clean.
Okay, if you
ironed.
If you want them cleaned, then look, there is a way. If you buy even the top of the range washing machine, it will become obsolete at some stage. It will die. But if you, instead of buying a washing machine, you lease the washing machine. That means someone, a company, installs this at your home, and then you will be, instead of buying this for a lot of money, for example, miele would cost you about £1,200 or £1,300, you pay £10 monthly for the use. And then, look, what changes? First of all, the company, assuming a producer of washing machines is part of this, they design this washing machine because they need to maintain it.
Yeah.
So they will replace parts, repair quickly, service this. And you know, when it is already obsolete and there is something better with better energy use, better efficiency, they will just replace this washing machine. Then it is also in the design, designing this, they will think how to reuse the components of this washing machine. So for example, you know, in the old-fashioned washing machines, there was a ballast, like a piece of concrete, which sort of prevented the washing machine dancing on your floor, you know, when it was sort of spinning. But now, what is commonly used is like cast iron. Why? Because you can melt it and you can reshape it to a different washing machine in the future. So what I'm saying, I'm giving you a trivial example that the designer thinks up front that I want to reuse the components. Look, the same is about electric meters. You know, average life of an electric meter is about 12-15 years. But components which are used to produce this meter, they are quite expensive and not that easy to buy. So it is in the interest of such a manufacturer of electric meters to manufacture it that they can take it back. Look, this is a win-win situation because then you paid for the meter, but then the producer will take it back for a fee.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's a win-win for everyone.
Yeah.
They have components, they have resources, and you got some money, you know, back, giving, you know, the old product. So you see, I'm trying to tell you that it is not just the design, buy products, reusing them. It is also changing the way of thinking. And listen, waste. Where do we actually, what do we waste a lot? Food products. Yes. Pass use by date, sell by date. I mean, we throw away a lot. This is not right. This is not right. We still have in the world problems with feeding people. And you know, we should actually sell this close to sell by use by date at a discounted price, lower price, so people can buy this food. So, you know, there are a lot of digital platforms, apps, which could be used to tell, listen, I have something like this, and I would like to get rid of this. You see, this is very popular among bakeries, for example, because they, at the end of the day, when they didn't sell the bread or other products, it will be a waste.
Yeah.
And this is too expensive, too precious product, to compost it or, use for just, something like that. It's better to sell it at a discounted price. Then, those who normally cannot afford the higher prices can actually benefit from this.
Yeah, so for like a normal consumer,
Yeah.
my takeaway from what you just described is that we need to just think differently about how we're accessing services and products in the market, because I think not having to maintain a washing machine would definitely convince a lot of people to sign up to the new business model. There's nothing wrong or nothing worse than having to wait for the handyman to come and repair and finding out how much that new component costs. So that's a really interesting aspect of it. And I know there are a lot of initiatives where you recycle your electronics and you sell it back. But living a waste-free life or a zero-waste life, is that just a fantasy?
Well, it's not a fantasy, but we have to be practical. There will be certain intermediate stages. So you cannot achieve 100% circularity. I mean, it's impossible, But if we start, as I said, thinking in a circular way, we may find obvious solutions. And listen, this is not rocket science. This is trying to think out of the box, trying to think creatively, how to use the components, how to use less, how to replace something with a different business model, as I already explained. And listen, another example I wanted actually to give you, there is a company in Finland which does not have any assets, but is manufacturing things. Why and how? They identify in existing industrial plants unused capacities. One company has a rolling mill, the other company has a foundry, another one has an assembly line, and currently in their production they are not using it. So this company markets that they can manufacture various things using these unused capacities in various other plants. Moreover, they are trying to also think in a way that transport is a cost and it's also emission of greenhouse gases. So they are trying to, for example, manufacture the heaviest part in a place when everything will be assembled to avoid the transportation costs. So you see, this is using what we already have, using it wisely without constructing a new production line. So this is again a way of thinking in a circular way.
Okay, we've got the thinking and the innovation down. Where do we begin? Who pays for it? Is it first policy, then we implement? Is it the businesses invest first and wait for the customers to catch up? Like, how do we implement it in reality? I know you designed a strategy for a country level, so you have thought through this level of complexity. And how do we start?
Well, this is systemic change. So we have to...
What is that?
Okay.
Where do you start the systemic change?
Systemic change, you have to change the whole system. It's not that you use just one component. So we need capacity building, we need training, we need to introduce the principle of circularity in the curricula of schools, universities, but even kindergartens, to make sure that we teach these basic things. Then you have to know where you are. That means you have to actually check how circular the economy is, or how circular the enterprise is. So you have to measure.
How do you check that? Is
Well,
there a framework? A
yes,
checklist?
you know, you have to map all the flows of materials from entering to leaving, and you have to identify what becomes a waste and why it becomes a waste. And this will show you the circularity of a plant, of a country. And now you have to concentrate on these low-hanging fruits where you can, without, why low-hanging fruit? You know, look, this is not the low-hanging fruit is that means you can pick up the fruit without much effort. Okay. So what I'm saying that you have to concentrate on first those measures which are easy to implement, which do not require, you ask me, who pays for this? A lot may not require payment and may bring measurable material benefits. So what I'm saying, let's try to do this. Why? Because we have to demonstrate to those who doubt that it can be done. Okay, so what I'm saying, and then there could be much more sophisticated measures which require preparation of a roadmap to circularity, both for a plant, for enterprise, for the whole country, and where to concentrate, on which measures. Look, when we are talking, we are sort of concentrating this on manufacturer, user, but there are also certain incentives. We are living in a linear world, which means we extract resources, reprocess them, make products, used products, and what do? Throw them away. Yeah. Yes. So, and a lot of our incentives, in terms of tax incentives, various type of funds, supporting funds, are targeting exactly this linear thinking. So we have to actually think through the life cycle. That means not throw away, but there is, look, if you throw away something, is there a cost? Of course there is a cost, because you have to either reprocess this or utilize or put it in the landfill, and you know, to design a landfill and operate the landfill, it's also a cost, yes? Yeah. So you have to think about not just selling the product and I wash my hands. You have to actually think what will happen with the product. As you see, there is something which is called extended producer's responsibility. That means this is a legal scheme in the European Union, but many countries adopted this, which means that the producer is responsible for what they produce. This first targeted sort of these more difficult from environmental point of view, like electronics, yeah, like spent oil, tires, batteries, but this is being extended. So then there are companies which actually are created to take these used products and reprocess them, reuse them in a different way. So extended producer's responsibility is a very good legal framework. It has to be enacted, but it has to be implemented. And to be honest, in this case, I found that small and medium-sized enterprises are a very dynamic part of the economy. And, you know, when they see this, they seize the opportunity, they jump into this, and, you know, they want to actually use their skills to sort of be part of this extended producer's responsibility. Where is the problem? You see, the problem is that they have very little experience, first of all, you know, access to technology, but also they don't know how to structure this project to access financing.
Exactly.
Because you see,
for it?
Most, you see, when there is, like I've seen in Georgia, for example, there was a fruit processing company which decided to buy a technological line to produce pectins. Pectins is a component used in pharmaceutical and cosmetic industries, and it's a commodity. It could be sold anywhere. It's a valuable. So they wanted to produce from the skins, from seeds, from the cores of apples, these pectins. And they started to approach the banks. What the bank said? The bank said, okay, show me your financing flow, show me your books, and they wanted to give them corporate loan. What does it mean? It's a loan which is based on the financial flow.
Yeah.
That means you can borrow money for whatever you want.
Yeah.
While, look, the whole pectin line, the cost was about 7 million euro. And the payback period was less than 3 years. If it was structured as project financing on its own merit, the risk should be, much, much lower. And financial institutions, would be more willing to finance this. You remember the trivial example of the washing machine.
Yeah.
Look, this from financial perspective changes also the cash flow. Exactly. Instead of selling a product, washing machine, you get the monthly fee. So, the recovering money, it requires upfront much higher capital investment to buy these washing machines. And here they are installed and money is coming from this monthly fee. So it changes, the flow. So financial institutions, yes, there are working groups among financial institutions to sort of try to come up with products which would cater for the market. Yeah. But at this stage, I would say it's the capacity, the knowledge is limited. And you see, most of these type of SMEs who would like to do things, there will be startups. Exactly. And startups are perceived as high risk, yes? You know it very well, okay?
And I also feel like, the issue is not this new type of business or service, subscription-based services or this type of business model, but it's really the startups that you don't know where it's leading to. And then, what you mentioned about waste projects, I worked on a few. I visited most landfill sites in Central Asia, and there's really limited components on recycling because it's still an expensive thing to do, and everybody's convinced that the returns on this investment will be great, but the reality is somewhere else. So how do we make sure that we're catering for the startups that are coming up with ways to recycle, to manage the waste? And is it even startups that should manage the waste? Because most of the projects we worked on, it falls under government responsibility, right?
Look, you're right, but we will be dealing with various waste streams. I mean, some of them will be in large quantities, some lower quantities. For example, there was a company again in Georgia which collected heavy metals like copper, like aluminium, and they were producing ingots, which they were able, to sell everywhere as a sort of raw material for reprocessing. So, there will be smaller type of waste streams, but there will be organizational challenge in terms of having the collection points, to this. But look, coming back to your question, how do we go about this? Look, this is a place where actually the authorities, policymakers, can actually make a difference because they can actually set up some advisory hubs where there will be information both about technology. Of course, at the EU level, you have Circulator, where they regularly update and you can find technologies. But when you have the hub, which is staffed, with knowledgeable people who can actually advise, but also to advise how to structure projects, so it is understood by the financial institutions to help them prepare business plan. This would actually unlock the potential of these SMEs to enter the market. So what I'm saying, yes, there is a place that we need to provide these type of advisory services. Moreover, from financial institutions perspective, to address the issue of startups and high risk, perceived high risk, it would be good to set up kind of guarantee facility which would take the risk. Banks would be much more willing to cough up money, finance this, when they would have this guarantee, which would guarantee that they will not lose their money. Okay,
Yeah,
so this
that
is
makes sense.
Yeah.
But is this guarantee, should it come from the government or should it come from a development finance institution?
It can come from both. I mean, there could be national, and there are, in Armenia, there is something which is called Enterprise Armenia. This is a fund, which actually is designed to provide this type of guarantee facilities. But it could be provided by multinational development banks as well. Why not? I've been trying to convince our alma mater, EBRD, that such a facility would unlock a lot of potential.
Yeah, I'm sure it would. And then the other question that came to mind when I was researching this topic is, what is the expertise you need? Because it's such a complex topic. Like, as you said, you need to understand the business model, you need to understand business strategy, accessing finance, but you also need to understand the technical aspects. How do I design a better product? How do I manufacture a better product? And as you said, some things are free. You just need to think differently and come up with these simple solutions. So what makes someone a circular economy expert?
I'm glad you asked, this question, but I want to go back to what I said at the beginning. This is way of thinking. So, we need technicians, so we need designers, we need financial specialists, we need lawyers, we need teachers who actually can explain the circular way of thinking, which means, in simple words, using our resources wisely so they last and we can use them in perpetuity in a way. So yes, this is something, you don't have circular economy specialists as such.
Well, some people call themselves that.
They may, many people call themselves various things, there are a lot of ESG specialists these days, but seriously, this is a way of thinking. Of course, there are designers who are specializing in designing so we can use components, and look, the car industry was probably at the forefront, where they knew that designing a car may mean that we can reuse many components of this car in the future. So, and they are still at the forefront. But it's across the industry currently. There is those who think about economic models, how to actually use it in a way that we can actually provide service rather than a product, which I mentioned as an example. Those who are providing legislation, that means the incentives needed to encourage those who actually operate in the life cycle of a product, like extended producer's responsibility. So, but first of all, I think it should be included in the curricula of teaching. At the universities, it's an obvious thing, but in addition to universities, you have to target children.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I think I mentioned to you in the past that my granddaughter is a chief enforcer of circularity measures at home. She is convinced this is how we should be doing, this is how we should be recycling, this is how we should be reusing materials. And I'm not joking, even in a kindergarten, you should actually include the principles. These little souls, they are like sponges. They absorb this and they are convinced and they are using this, so...
No, I know, and I know you teach at the university, so you encounter those people as well who are a bit more grown up and have their own ideas. So how do you, what are the main principles that you're teaching when you're lecturing at a university?
Well, it all depends who is it for. When I'm doing the technical university, I concentrate more on technical aspects of design and the whole technological line, production, byproducts, as you mentioned, how to reuse them, how to use less energy. For example, just to give you an example, recently I was working with a pharmaceutical industry where when they package medicine, there are ways of avoiding. Can you imagine how much waste is produced from these bubbles, from this packaging of various medicaments? No, so you can actually have wise ways of using biodegradable material, which sort of can be decomposed, in nature, using much less of this plastic. So using without this sort of paper cover into this, you can achieve quite a lot. So this is technical aspects, but when I'm talking to MBA students, we concentrate more on economic models, how the cash flow changes, how actually the risk changes, who should absorb the risk, where the legislation is needed to unlock certain potential. So, yeah.
What were some of the amazing ideas that you've heard from your students? Was there anything outstanding or particularly innovative that you can recall?
I haven't heard, from students, any really fantastic ideas. But what I was actually quite pleased to see that for many of them it was an eye opener that you can think differently, and most of them pledged that they will be using this in their both scientific work and in future lives. And one of the girls mentioned, I will definitely teach my children, how to behave in a circular way. But listen, some ideas are very simple. There was, it started in Finland, a very successful company, 3 ladies, who started to produce patches, adhesive patches, when you had clothes which was stained or which was like broken. Instead of sort of throwing it away or repairing in a traditional way, they put these adhesive patches on their trousers or whatever. It became sort of like a fashion statement that you have these patches in various places. This was a company which started in a garage. There were 3 of them. Currently, I haven't checked the current, but at the end of last year they had a turnover of 10 million euro, and they were trading through the whole Scandinavia on these patches, adhesive patches.
Wow.
So look, simple idea, but principle is the same.
Yeah.
Keep my clothes longer. Repair it, make it fun, So, and look, when we are at the fashion industry, I'm sure you heard that many people, are sort of trying to exchange, clothes.
Yeah.
So they actually, you don't buy expensive item, and when you get bored, it is in your wardrobe forever. And no, you can actually put this trading places where, and these became very popular. Recently, I went to one, this sort of marketplace in Warsaw, where people were actually trading this sort of, unwanted, pre-owned, beloved, things.
That's amazing. So now let's get to the next segment where I'm going to ask you, is it real or is it greenwash for circular economy? We've talked about some of this. What about repair programs with barriers? Like a company offering a repair service, but it's less accessible, or there's like cost or condition restrictions?
Well,
it depends, yeah.
Of course, it's question of a context, but let's try to think in a simple way. You ask me, is it real or is it? It is real. It's not only real; it's a necessity. If we continue acting like we've been acting in terms of using, throwing away, we will get into the barrier of not having resources, and think about implications. If something becomes scarce, of course you encounter problems with finding this, but what is the implication? The price goes up. Countries which have these resources introduce trade barriers. We recently hear about trade barriers a lot, yes?
Yeah.
So, what I'm saying, it sort of destabilizes the market. So I'm absolutely convinced, and I'm trying to convince as many people as possible, that circular economy is a necessity. Now, you mentioned repair. Okay, you create a network of repair shops, which would be probably part of this extended producer's responsibility, where you can prolong life, when you can replace certain parts with new parts, make it more efficient. Look what social implications you have. You have employment in these workshops. Moreover, you create a need, and I know it could be a buzzword, reverse logistic.
Yeah.
What it is? What it is? It is that you take people, goods which were used, require to be repaired or renewed, from people to these workshops, yes? So this is not logistics which delivers things, but takes to these workshops. Again, creation of jobs. Yeah. So what I'm saying, that circular economy has a potential to create new jobs, which is socially good thing.
Yeah. Okay. How about bio-based plastic labeled as eco-friendly?
Biodegradable plastic, which decomposes in nature, is probably at this stage a necessity. In my humble view, we're using too much for packaging. Okay. When I was growing up, we had a lot of, recyclable bottles and whatever. These days, everything is sort of packed in plastic. So this biodegradable plastic, or less plastic, is a good thing in terms of, because it sort of reduces the material in terms of when we are trying to use less. But at the end of the day, we are facing a lot of problems with microplastics, with these plastic components ending up in oceans, in the bellies of fish, in muscles of animals. And so, we have to prevent environmental disaster from this. So biodegradable plastic, bio-based plastics, in my view, it's something which is interim, which is needed at this stage. And you have very nice technologies these days that when you package something, you just spray the foil over this. You don't need actually to have, and then you can actually throw it to nature, compost it, so it is less of an environmental impact at the end of the day.
Okay. How about modular product design?
This is what I mentioned at the beginning. This is the designing of products that you can use components, not necessarily to produce the same product, but use components for something different. So modular production is one of the drivers for circularity. That means having the whole thing is that when we manufactured something, we created a value. When you throw it away, the whole creation of this value disappears.
Yeah.
But when you can use components, use byproducts, and give it a new life, and there are two sort of concepts. This new life, there could be upcycling or downcycling, which means we can produce something which is of higher value,
Yeah.
or produce something which is at lower value but costs less.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay. No, that's interesting. We kind of talked about fashion, but what about those brands that claim that their fabrics are blended, recyclable in fast fashion?
Well, this is step in the right direction. There are many companies which reuse fiber from clothes, and when their products are designed that you can reuse every component of this, and many countries actually introduce legislation that you are not allowed to dump clothes together with mixed waste. For example, in my home country, in Poland, this is a requirement, and they are reprocessed. But you see, Ildiko, there is certain elements. Some people are sometimes worried that there is this collection of recycled materials, but it ends up everything at the landfill together. Yeah, I'll tell you why. Because there is something which is called economy of scale. You have to make people to enter certain habit, that they recycle, they collect separately. After a while, when they do this, you have higher amount of these products, and then it is worthwhile reprocessing this. Yeah. If you do not have stable supply of these resources, and in Georgia, there is a fantastic reprocessor of plastics. But where is the barrier? The barrier is that the government did not arrange the sort of collection points for plastics, and most plastics end up as mixed waste. So they are facing a barrier of actually having these plastic bottles which end up in mixed waste. So I try to explain to you that you have to have certain amount that it is worth doing it.
Yeah. No, it seems like we're coming full circle on this, with all the different actors, how the government is introducing the policy that supports the businesses, that cater to this new mindset customers who are just thinking in this new innovative way. So if someone is listening, or if someone is a founder of a company and they want to get 3 practical tips on how to identify ways to make their operations more circular, what would you say are the most simple, or the cheapest ways to achieve this?
I'm actually very pleased that you ask, how do you do this in the company? You have to have champions in the company. That means you have to empower people, unlock their potential in a way, not be hierarchical as it is in the traditional companies, but actually allow people to come up with innovations. Look at flows of material within the company. Am I using the right amount of resources? Do I produce waste? Do I produce products? Can I replace energy with, can I put solar roof instead of, using gas or something like that? Then this is the basic step. Try to identify the flows, empower people, train people in terms of raise awareness. So go for transparent information within the company. At that stage, also work with the peers, work with other companies doing the same, particularly in your supply chain.
Yes.
So you see, this is actually, there is a British standard institution published, this is a voluntary standard, 8000, which is actually how to change the company to go more circular. So, what I mentioned to you, of course, this is the basic step. Then low-hanging fruit, which, you buzzed me for, try to identify what I can fix quickly. Then what requires the more sophisticated measures, bringing some specialists who could advise on this, and and then go in the whole loop. So once you have the measures, go again, look again at this. This is a cycle in a way. So that way you can actually improve the whole process, which would be conducive to reducing waste, which require final disposal, and will make the process more efficient. I'm always advocating to go first for those which are low cost or no cost measures.
Exactly.
At some point, when I mentioned to you for producing pectins, you have to buy sophisticated equipment. Yes, no doubt about this. But what would be the alternative? These seed skins would be composted. Yes, composted. This is too valuable resource, to compose this. You have to give it a bit of a boost to increase the value. Recently, I came back from Mongolia, where they have a lot of yaks.
Yeah.
And yak leather is a fantastic leather. The best winter shoes are made of yak leather. There is a lot of the small manufacturers which do the basic tanning, the basic sort of preparation of skin. They are still using toxic chemicals for this. So, there is a program to replace this, to help them. What for? Because if they use better products, if they trace this from the yak owner through processing and everything, they can access more of world markets, which means higher price for their leather. Yeah. So this is what I was interacting with yak herders to actually help them. There is a program sponsored by the European Union. This is a pilot program, but this is the one of the key sort of occupation is actually herding animals in Mongolia. So, this is one of the key industries over there.
No, this is fascinating. I would certainly try the yak leather shoes for the winter in Eastern Europe. Thank you for being here, Dariusz, and sharing your insights on the circular economy. This was it for today. I hope you got closer to be inspired on how to go circular. We have come full circle, explored it from all different angles, and I'll see you next time.